terms of African solutions and what these have looked like so far, you know, for me, I think these are things that exist, but we don't often think of as solutions. So the first one is African solutions in these contexts have largely entailed dialogue, listening, talking, creating and providing space and allowing for various people to engage in that space. So whether they're insiders, so those most affected, or whether they're external people, maybe international actors, it means allowing ideas and language into a space and to make contribution. And for example, and we have many examples where this has taken place, where it has involved these kinds of, you know, talking, dialogue, etc. So if we think about Gachacha in Rwanda, if we think about engaging the Magamba spirits in Mozambique, if we think about Macho Put in northern Uganda, all processes to have conversation, to provide space for people who have been affected and people who have perpetrated violations to be in the same space and agree on a way for moving forward and moving together. The second thing around solutions is that it's involved time. And so that's why I appreciate what you said at the very beginning, that now may not be the time to start talking about it, but maybe the time to start thinking about reconciliation. So it's involved time, both long time or long term and short term, and realizing and accepting that some things happen in the now and others may happen a very long time after, right? But these things and these processes are still very linked. So the immediate processes and the much later processes, like Chantal gave us an example of, are still very linked. So for example, in Zimbabwe, the country that I come from, we now are beginning to have conversations about events that took place almost 40 years ago. In South Africa, they had a truth and reconciliation process alongside the independence and liberation process. In Mozambique, now we see questions that came up in the previous conflict coming up in the conflict that's currently happening. In South Sudan, this is something that is currently unfolding. So these processes are also then linked and tied together by a number of things that revolve around knowledge, data, and information. So it could be factual information about what happened, when, who, the numbers of those affected, statistics, geo data, geolocation data, spatial data, right? It could also involve memory, right? So memory of various people that remember things in different ways and not in the same way, even within the same household, a husband and a wife who may have witnessed the same thing may not remember something in the same way. It happens it's narrated in different languages, right? And also memory that fades over time. It's also linked through stories that are told by certain voices, whether it's the media, social media, international media, local media, national media, regional media. It's told for different reasons, right? To share, to evoke emotion, to distort even the facts of something that may have happened. And so this is all part of these processes, which are solutions. And then lastly, African people, and one of the solutions has been African people and institutions taking leadership. I know in this particular context, we've heard from Jumoke that there hasn't been sufficient, we haven't seen sufficient leadership being taken, which is why I think such an initiative by young people is really important, and it is part of taking leadership. But we see in these situations leadership emerging. And my challenge to you all is, where the leadership has not emerged from the quarters where we would expect it to, what is it that not only yourselves as Tigrayan Youth Network, but other young people can do by way of taking leadership? But we do see that institutions, people, individuals take leadership, and this is through thought leadership in terms of research, documentation, fact-finding, and bringing to bear and testing some of the African norms and values. Again, Jumoke spoke about some of these, but there are questions around how can ordinary people use some of the instruments that exist at a continental level, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, the African Charter on Democracy and Good Governance, and some of the other institutions. How do you make use of solidarity networks across the continent, the Pan-African movement, in order to bring to bear some of these solutions? So let me leave it at that and can take questions. Thank you. I hope that made sense and was useful.